A very good evening and welcome to the news tonight, where we get you the day's top stories from India and across the world. I'm Tracy Shilshi, and let's start with the headlines. Violent protests continue against Nepal's new constitution. Army carries out flag marches in affected areas. A concerned India calls a Nepal ambassador to Delhi for consultations. Controversies mar the announcement of candidates in Bihar. 9 more names for the LJP and 17 in the RLSP list. Home Minister Rajnath Singh starts a 3-day visit to border areas in Jammu. India and Pakistan start flag meetings at the line of control. And Syriza party leader Alexis Tsipras wins a renewed mandate in Greece, will form a coalition government with nationalist independent Greeks. Top focus on the Bihar Assembly elections. The LJP and the RLSP today announced their list of candidates. With today's announcement, LJP has announced the names of 21 of its 40 candidates, while this was the RLSP's first list with 17 names. Both announcements, of course, came with a fair bit of controversy. Here are the details.
The Lok Janshakti Party announced candidates for 9 more seats for the Bihar Assembly elections on Monday. With this, the party has announced names for 21 of the 40 seats allotted to it as part of the NDA's seat-sharing agreement. The party has selected former MP and strongman Kali Pandey from Kuchaikot and Vijay Singh from the Chakai Assembly seat. It was at loggerheads with Jatin Ram Manjhi's HAM over the Chakai seat.
40 सीटें ऐसी हैं जिस पर लोक जनशक्ति पार्टी अपने प्रत्याशी उतारेगी, अपने सिंबल मंगला छाप पर हम लोग चुनाव लड़ेंगे। आज मैं 9 प्रत्याशियों की दूसरी सूची जारी कर रहा हूं, जिसमें कि प्रथम चरण में हमारे जितने भी उम्मीदवार हैं वो इस सूची में कंप्लीट हो जाते हैं। इसमें से 6 उम्मीदवार हमारे ऐसे हैं जो कि प्रथम चरण के हैं और बाकी एक द्वितीय का, एक तृतीय का और एक चौथे चरण का है।
The announcement comes in the midst of reports of internal bickering. There was much hue and cry over Anil Kumar Sadhu, who is Ram Vilas Paswan's son-in-law, being denied a ticket. But the party says it is a family matter.
क्योंकि ये पारिवारिक मसला है, मैं इसको सार्वजनिक मंच पर मैं इसका वाद विवाद में मैं नहीं उलझूंगा। वो मुझसे बड़े हैं, मैं उस रिश्ते का, अपने परिवार की इज्जत का, दोनों का मैं सम्मान करता हूं। इस पर मैं कोई सार्वजनिक टिप्पणी नहीं करूंगा।
Another NDA ally, Rashtriya Lok Samta Party, also announced the first list of 17 candidates. This announcement was also mired in controversy as party chief Upendra Kushwaha expressed his displeasure over BJP keeping the Meenapur seat for itself.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने कहा कि हमारी सिटिंग सीट है, इसलिए हम नहीं दे सकते। आप अगर सिटिंग के नाम पर मेरे दावा को नहीं मान रहे हैं तो कोई बात नहीं है, अच्छी बात है, सिटिंग है इसलिए लड़ाइए। लेकिन बाद में ऐसा नहीं हो कि सिटिंग के नाम पर आप सीट अपने खाते में लीजिए और बाद में कोई दूसरे व्यक्ति को लड़ा दीजिए।
RLSP's announcement also saw protests by those who were denied tickets. Voting for the 49 seats in the first phase will take place on October 12th. Elections are to be held in 5 phases, with the result being announced on November 8th. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, the RSS has called for a review of the reservation policy, slamming the quota system as a political tool. Though the BJP has ruled out any changes, RSS chief's remarks were criticized by opposition parties, renewing a call to release the caste census data. In Bihar, in fact, parties like the JDU and the RJD have been raking up the caste factor in the rallies in the run-up to the assembly polls.
Caste remains a dominant factor in the Bihar Assembly elections, and the forthcoming Assembly poll promises to be no exception. Parties have been wiping up the caste sentiment in rallies across the state. RSS added a bit of fuel to that. Its chief Mohan Bhagwat suggested a review of the reservation policy. Referring to the quota stir in Gujarat led by Hardik Patel, Bhagwat suggested a committee of civil society members to decide who should get the benefit of the policy. His remarks had a ripple effect in Bihar, where parties have been calling for the release of latest caste census data. They slammed Bhagwat's suggestions and also targeted the Modi government. However, BJP steered clear of controversy.
The BJP is not in favor of any reconsideration of the reservation being extended to these groups, namely the SC, the ST the backward caste and extremely backward caste as enshrined in the constitution.
चंद लोगों को खुश करने के लिए, अभिजात वर्ग को, ऊंची जाति के लोगों को खुश करने के लिए ऐसे समय में जब बिहार का चुनाव होने जा रहा है, आपने इस तरह का कुंठित प्रयास आप कंस्पिरेसी करना चाहते हैं.
Why isn't this Modi government releasing the caste census? I challenge them to release the caste census, and the whole world will come to know what is the actual reality, and then the OBCs will decide, because the true face of this government is slowly coming out, that they are wanting Hindu consolidation to ensure that OBC reservation and other reservation comes down.
जो लोग भारत की एकता और अखंडता को तोड़ना चाहते हैं, जिनका संवैधानिक संस्थाओं में विश्वास कम है, वो लोग और वो संस्थाएं ही इस तरह के वक्तव्य देने पर तुली हुई हैं.
Janata Parivar is aiming to consolidate the backward class votes that had propelled Chief Minister Nitish Kumar to power. Both Nitish and his ally RJD Chief Lalu Prasad have proposed Mandal 2.0 politics in an attempt to keep BJP and its allies out of power in the state. Bureau Report, Sabha TV.
And now to our focus on Nepal, where violent protests broke out in the southern parts of the country and the army has been called in to conduct flag marches in the sensitive areas. This over the adoption of the new constitution, which, according to protesters, does not take everyone's interests into account. A concerned India, of course, issued another statement today and has called its Nepal ambassador back to Delhi for consultations. Here's a report.
Violent clashes between protesters and police in Birganj town in South Nepal. Protesters displaying their opposition to what they call is an unfair constitution. Certain communities are upset with the new constitution adopted by the country's parliament as they want Nepal to be a Hindu nation. The new constitution adopted on Sunday creates 7 states in a secular federal system. There is also a feeling that it does not favor people in the plains near India.
हम लोग इसका विरोध करते हैं. संविधान मधेशियों के हक में नहीं है और भारत ने भी इसको कह दिया है, रिजेक्ट कर दिया है कि हम मान्यता नहीं देते हैं और हम सड़क पर उतर करके हम लोग पूरा विरोध करते हैं, हड़ताल करते हैं.
The violence has claimed at least 40 lives, prompting the government to impose curfew in the lowlands. Shops, colleges, schools and institutions remained closed. The Nepalese army carried out a flag march. India has urged the Himalayan nation to resolve differences through dialogue. Nepal in turn says even though it wants India's goodwill, but it is their internal matter.
संविधान बनाने के समय इन लोगों ने हम लोगों के समझौता को लागू नहीं किया और बार बार ये लोग यही बात कर रहे हैं कि अब आइए और वार्ता कीजिए. वार्ता का तो औचित्य ही नहीं है ना. औचित्य तो तब था जब अगर आप हमारा मांग जो था, हमारे साथ जो सहमति हुई थी मधेसियों के साथ, 1.5 करोड़ मधेसी रहते हैं इस राष्ट्र में, 53% जो पूरी जनसंख्या का लोग है, तो अगर वो संविधान में ये लोग हम लोगों का हक अधिकार हमारे समझौता के तहत सुरक्षित कराए होते तो मुझे लगता है कि हम लोग सड़क पे हम लोगों को नहीं आना पड़ता.
Prime Minister Sushil Koirala is likely to step down to allow a new government under the charter. The democratic constitution is a historic step for a nation that has seen war, a palace massacre and devastating earthquakes since a campaign to create a modern state began more than 65 years ago. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, for more on this, we're joined by former diplomat Rakesh Sood, joining us on the phone line from the capital. Sir, if you can hear me, thanks so much for joining us on the news tonight. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, Mr. Sood, first of all, we just like to know, India, of course, recalling its ambassador in Nepal, calling him back to Delhi for consultations. Are India's concerns valid?
Well, certainly we have conveyed, I think, at the level of Prime Minister Modi, then at the level of Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj, we've conveyed that we would have liked to see a constitution which would be inclusive. And clearly, given the fact that there is a large part of the population of Nepal which is not enthusiastic about this constitution, which is actually upset about it, because as you know, for the last 4 weeks, a large part of the Tarai has been under lockdown, has been in what is called a bandh. there have been incidents of violence. In the last month or so, 40 people have been killed. So obviously, this is not a constitution which is being received enthusiastically by the entire population. And I think India, in its statement that was issued yesterday, as well as the statement that has been issued today, has made its unhappiness quite clear. In fact, the words used are that we have noted that there is a constitution. Normally, we would have welcomed if all sections of the population were enthusiastic about it.
That's right. What would you in fact say to how Nepal has reacted to India's concern, saying that thank you so much for your advice, but no thank you, this is our problem, we'd like to deal with it. This is not the first time, of course, that Nepal has reacted when India has voiced concerns about various issues.
True, very true. I think we have to understand that India and Nepal have enjoyed the closest of relationships. And when there is such a close relationship, it is also a very complex relationship, which means that there are sensitivities on both sides which need to be carefully understood. Now, normally, what happens is that we are able to get that kind of understanding, but when the internal political situation in Nepal is polarized, as it has been for the last few months, in fact, this constitution, the original deadline was January of 2015. And this is after the process began in 2008. So after that, in fact, it was quite clear that the constitution was not happening. It was the massive earthquake which acted as a trigger, because the earthquake brought a lot of negative criticism to the Nepali political leadership. And as a result, the Nepali political leadership decided to accelerate the constitutional drafting process. In their haste, I would say, not all the marginalized communities, which account for more than 1/4 of the population, namely the Madhesis, the Janjatis, the Tharus, their interests, these communities feel, have not been taken into account. And traditionally, these have been the marginalized communities.
So what's the way forward now for Nepal, sir? Very quickly, what's the way forward? What do we see now in the coming days, as far as, the government is concerned? What would they be doing?
Well, I don't know what the government will be doing, but if the government wants this constitution, wants the new constitution to actually lead to stability and economic development, then I think it is imperative that the constitution be accepted by the entire population, that everybody, all the groups, become stakeholders in the new constitution. And for that, the leadership of the three principal parties that have pushed this constitution has to reach out. In fact, they should have reached out much before so that necessary understandings and compromises could be worked out.
All right. All right, Mr. Su, thanks so much for joining us on this story. Thank you. While we're talking about Nepal, let's also talk about another neighbor, which is, of course, Pakistan. And as Home Minister Rajnath Singh began a 3-day visit today to the border areas with Pakistan and China, a flag meeting also started at the line of control between India and Pakistan. The meeting aimed to restore the sanctity of the ceasefire agreement and was held at the Chakandabagh crossing point. It comes soon after the DGMO talks in Delhi. The Minister of State for Home Affairs, Kiran Rijiju, said that the brigadier-level flag meeting will give a further boost to confidence measures between the two neighbours. Meanwhile, Rajnath Singh was in Jammu's Samba sector today. He's also expected to visit border posts in Chumar in Ladakh, where Indian and Chinese troops had a tense face-off in September last year.
हम तो चाहेंगे ही कि अच्छे रिश्ते हों। हमारी तरफ से तो बराबर ये कोशिश है, हमारा हाथ बराबर बढ़ा हुआ है। हाँ, लेकिन इतना मैं देशवासियों को आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूं कि भारत के मान सम्मान स्वाभिमान के साथ कोई समझौता हमारी सरकार नहीं करेगी।
फ्लैग मीटिंग होता है, वो फॉलो अप है। पिछली बार डीजी लेवल का यहाँ दिल्ली में बातचीत हुआ था, हमसे मिले थे पाकिस्तान का पाक रेंजर्स का जो डीजी का टीम आए थे। आज तो उसका फॉलो अप है, फ्लैग मीटिंग है, इससे कॉन्फिडेंस बढ़ेगा, दोनों में अच्छा तालमेल होना चाहिए।
And still ahead, India and the US to hold first strategic and commercial dialogue in an attempt to boost bilateral trade by 5-fold. Detail of that in a bit.
Hello and welcome to India's World. The Sri Lankans are very particular about their sovereignty and they consider it very sacrosanct in a way.
Use our influence with the Sri Lankan Tamils.
Actually, the fire is on the Sri Lankan army, and no state can afford to have its army demoralized, as you said, after the victory.
Watch experts discuss the fallouts of war crimes in Sri Lanka in India's World on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. You're watching the news tonight. Let's get you some more national news. And Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi invoked Apple founder Steve Jobs as his party discussed ways to revive itself in Uttar Pradesh. At a pep talk in Mathura at the party's Chintan Shivir, Rahul told his party workers to work unitedly as a team. He also took a jibe at Prime Minister Narendra Modi, claiming that the Prime Minister was scripting his own downfall by failing to fulfill promises made to the people. Rahul urged his party workers to work together to fill that void that will be created after Modi's exit.
किसान के बारे में कहा एमएसपी बढ़ा दूंगा, घबराओ मत, अच्छे दिन आएंगे। और हिंदुस्तान में हर प्रदेश में किसान आत्महत्या कर रहा है। युवाओं को कहा अच्छे दिन आएंगे, रोजगार मिल जाएगा। एक युवा को रोजगार नहीं मिला।
And now let's get you some more national news updates in Nationwide. The Supreme Court today rejected a PIL seeking direction to the centre to declassify confidential documents on Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. The court gave two options to the petitioner, Snehashish Mukherjee. He would move the High Court or wait for the government's response on the issue. The Bombay High Court has refused to grant interim stay on beef ban during the Eid festival. The court refused to accept that slaughter of animals and their sacrifice form an essential part of the Muslim community's religious practice. The court said that the matter can be only dealt with after a detailed affidavit is filed by all the respondents. NDRF teams entered a tunnel in Himachal Pradesh to rescue two workers stuck there for over 200 hours. Efforts are on to locate the third worker who has remained untraced during the whole operation. The rescue workers were in regular touch with a microphone linked through a webcam. The rescue team provided with dry fruits and glucose during the operation. The Delhi High Court today sought the AAP government's response on a PIL seeking direction to immediately release funds allocated for malaria and dengue control programs to municipal bodies. The petition directs authorities to ensure that no hospital should turn away patients with symptoms of dengue and award severe penalties if they do so. India and the US are set to hold the first composite strategic and commercial dialogue on Monday with an aim to increase bilateral trade fivefold to $500 billion. This also comes ahead of Prime Minister's US visit later this week. The Indian CEOs are upbeat ahead of the talks.
Ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to America, India and the US will hold the first ministerial meeting of the Strategic and Commercial Dialogue in Washington. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj will lead the Indian delegation, while the US delegation will be headed by Secretary of State John Kerry. During the dialogue, several bilateral, regional and global issues would be discussed between the two sides. CEOs from both the countries are expected to attend the meet in large numbers.
I think both sides are looking at investing in each other's country, and I think the business opportunities are very compelling in India and in the US. I think there is a lot of natural partnership already because Indian companies are invested in America and vice versa.
The purpose of this is to promote bilateral trade and investments, and a number of issues are going to be discussed tomorrow. Smart cities, digital infrastructure, manufacturing in India, infrastructure. So a lot of projects have been identified.
During US President Barack Obama's visit to India in January, the two countries had projected a target of $500 billion of bilateral trade. The decision to elevate the India-US strategic dialogue into a strategic and commercial dialogue was also taken during the visit. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
More international news. In Syriza, party leader Alexis Tsipras won a clear mandate in the just concluded Greek elections. However, the party is still short of a majority, winning just over 35% of the votes. They will now form a coalition government with the nationalist independent Greeks.
Δώσαμε μια σκληρή και δύσκολη μάχη και αισθάνομαι σήμερα δικαιωμένος γιατί ο ελληνικός λαός έδωσε μια καθαρή εντολή να συνεχίσουμε να παλεύουμε και μέσα και έξω από τη χώρα για να σηκώσουμε ψηλά την περηφάνεια του λαού μας.
Alexis Tsipras storming back to power with an unexpected election victory, but he is making no promises, only assurances that the government will work hard.
Του αγώνα και της αξιοπρέπειας. Και αυτόν τον αγώνα θα το συνεχίσουμε μαζί για μια ολόκληρη τετραετία. Διότι η εντολή που πήραμε είναι εντολή τετραετία. Από τα βάθη της καρδιάς μου.
Celebrations broke across the streets as Syriza supporters hailed the victory. With Tsipras back in power, residents are sounding hopeful.
Είμαι πιεσμένη γενικά και επειδή ξέρω ότι είμαι και άνεργη και επειδή ξέρω ότι ο Τσίπρας και το κόμμα αυτό θα φροντίσει γενικά τους ανθρώπους σαν και εμένα, πιστεύω έχω μια ελπίδα, ας πούμε.
Ο ελληνικός λαός με αυτή τη ψήφο έστειλε το μήνυμα ώστε όλη η Ελλάδα να πάει μπροστά, να τα καταφέρουμε όλοι.
European Union leaders are pinning their hopes on the new Greek government. Head of the Eurogroup, Jeroen Dijsselbloem, says he is ready to work closely with the new government.
With respect to the relationship to EU partners, I don't think that it has that much strengthened his position. The key things have been negotiated in July, August. It is now about implementing most of the things which have been agreed to.
The Greek leftist party is still short of majority. It now forms a coalition with the nationalist independent Greeks. Tsipras has a tough task ahead. Greece is still under recession, and the international creditors need to be satisfied by fulfilling the terms of the €86 billion bailout package. The bailout program will be reviewed next month. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And I'll take you through all the other international stories in Global Buzz. Beijing hosted the 7th China-UK Economic and Financial Dialogue today. UK's Chancellor George Osborne met Chinese Vice Premier Ma Kai. Britain has said it will guarantee a £2 billion deal. EU interior ministers are meeting to decide on a voluntary scheme to relocate 160,000 migrants on Tuesday. German Chancellor Angela Merkel called on European leaders to accept joint responsibility for what she said was the continent's worst migration crisis since World War II. Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull's new cabinet was sworn in with 5 women ministers today. It includes Marise Payne, who became the country's first woman defence minister. Turnbull presented his new team to Governor-General Peter Cosgrove at a swearing-in ceremony in Canberra. Back home now, and tributes poured in for BCCI President Jagmohan Dalmia, who died of cardiac arrest in Kolkata last night. Several sports administrators, including former BCCI boss N. Srinivasan, queued up outside the iconic Eden Gardens to pay their last respects. Dalmia was cremated after his body was kept at the stadium since morning.
There was a beeline of cricketers, former and present, as well as thousands of well-wishers outside the Eden Gardens since Monday morning. They paid tributes to BCCI President Jagmohan Dalmia, who died at a private hospital on Sunday night. He was 75 years old. A former ICC boss who was instrumental behind development of cricket across the world, Dalmia was fondly remembered by all as a sports administrator who was always on the side of the cricketers.
BCCI has lost a visionary and a father figure of Indian cricket. He was a great cricket administrator. It's a great loss to Indian cricket, and personally a great loss to me as well.
It's a very sad occasion. It's a solemn occasion. No, it's a great loss.
You won't get this type of good administrator, cricket administrator, because he knows the cricket like anything.
A businessman known for his marketing acumen, Dalmia was a key figure in bringing the 1987 and 1996 Cricket World Cups to the subcontinent. With Dalmia's death leaving a vacuum at the top in BCCI, IPL chairman Rajiv Shukla said that the board will appoint an interim president if its constitution permits. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now let's get you some updates from the world of sports and Sports Beat. Belgium reached their first Davis Cup final in over 100 years after beating Argentina 3-2 in the semi-finals. Belgium, who trailed the tie 2-1, completed a thrilling comeback with both David Goffin and Steven Darcis winning their reverse singles match. They will now be playing Great Britain in the final. Lionel Messi scored twice and missed a penalty in Barcelona's 4-1 win over Levante. After a goalless first half, the match came to life with the defending champions scoring 3 goals in 12 minutes through Bartra, Neymar and Messi. Levante got a goal back, but Messi struck again in the 90th minute to put Barcelona back on top of the La Liga table. Borussia Dortmund continued their 100% winning record in the Bundesliga after a comfortable 3-0 victory over Darmstadt. Jonas Hoffmann, Shinji Kagawa and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang were on target for Dortmund. With the win, Dortmund regained the top spot in the league, extending their winning run to 11 games. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight. Join us again tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining us now.